Lonzo Ball just got cut, traded to a team that didn't even want him, waived within 24 hours, and left completely without a team for the first time in his professional career. But while the basketball world was busy writing Lonzo's obituary, his father, Lavar Ball, was doing something nobody expected. And when you hear exactly what Lavar said, and more importantly what he did behind closed doors before any of this went public, you are going to understand why this situation is far more complicated than a simple roster cut. Stay with me until the end of this video, because the last piece of information I'm going to share with you completely changes how you look at Lonzo's future. Let's set the scene. February 5th, 2026, the Utah Jazz officially placed Lonzo Ball on waivers. The move itself was not a surprise. Utah acquired him from the Cleveland Cavaliers one day earlier as part of a 3-team deal, and Cleveland had to attach 2 future second-round picks just to get someone to take Lonzo's $10 million salary off their books. Think about that for a second. The Cavaliers were so desperate to move on from Lonzo that they literally paid another team to take him. That is one of the most brutal forms of rejection in professional basketball. And yet, somehow, the story gets even more painful from there. But before we get into Lavar's reaction, we need to understand how Lonzo ended up in this position in the first place, because this was not supposed to go this way, not even close. When the Cleveland Cavaliers acquired Lonzo Ball from the Chicago Bulls in the summer of 2025, there was genuine excitement around the move. Cleveland had one of the most dominant front courts in the NBA with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley. They had their star guard in Darius Garland. What they needed was a secondary playmaker, a guy who could defend multiple positions, push the pace, and keep the ball moving without needing the offense to run through him. On paper, Lonzo Ball was the perfect fit, coming off a season in Chicago where he averaged 7.6 points, 3.4 rebounds, and 3.3 assists in 35 games. It was the first time in over 2 years he had even suited up for an NBA game. The basketball world was cautiously optimistic. Lavar Ball was loudly optimistic, and that distinction matters more than people realized at the time. Here is where things started to fall apart. Cleveland already had Darius Garland operating as the engine of their offense. Lonzo was not going to start. He was going to come off the bench, play complimentary minutes, and find his rhythm in a supporting role. That might sound reasonable to you and me, but to Lavar Ball, that was unacceptable from day one. Lavar did not stay quiet. He went public on the Ball in the Family podcast and made it crystal clear that he believed the Cavaliers were misusing his son. He said Lonzo coming off the bench was the worst thing for him, that his entire value as a player is making everyone around him better, and that you cannot do that from the second unit. He was not whispering this in private. He was broadcasting it. But here is the part that most people glossed over when this story came out. Lavar Ball did not just go on a podcast. According to reports, he actually confronted the Cleveland Cavaliers organization directly. He stepped in and told them face-to-face how to use his son, a father, walking into an NBA front office telling them they are wrong about their own roster decisions. Now stop and think about that for a moment, because that detail tells you everything about the dynamic inside the Ball family, and it raises a question that nobody is really asking. Did Lavar's interference make things worse for Lonzo in Cleveland? We will come back to that. In the meantime, Lonzo's numbers were telling a brutal story. In 35 games with the Cavaliers, he averaged just 4.6 points, 4 rebounds, and 3.9 assists, while shooting 30.1% from the field and 27.2% from 3. Those shooting percentages are not just bad, they are historically bad for a player at his level. Cleveland's coaching staff began phasing him out of the rotation entirely in favor of Craig Porter Jr. By the time the trade deadline arrived, the Cavaliers had made their decision. Lonzo Ball was a luxury tax liability they could not afford to keep, and they moved him out with picks attached just to clear the roster spot. Lavar's response to all of this was predictable in tone but surprising in scope. He did not just defend his son. He went on a full offensive, blaming the Cavaliers' coaching staff and organizational mindset for destroying what Lonzo could have been in Cleveland. He told the Kia podcast that playing in Cleveland was the biggest mistake of Lonzo's career. He said the coaching staff had the wrong mindset. He pointed out that Lonzo has never been a corner shooter, that his entire game is built around operating from the top of the key as a facilitator, and that Cleveland kept forcing him into spots that had nothing to do with his skill set. And honestly, if you watch the film, Lavar is not entirely wrong about that. The problem is that none of this explains the shooting percentages. A player at Lonzo's level should be able to adapt. The fact that he could not raise his questions that go deeper than scheme. And now here is the part of this story that changes everything. After Lonzo cleared waivers, Lavar immediately shifted from attacking Cleveland to campaigning for his son's next destination. His first call was to the basketball public, urging the Charlotte Hornets to sign Lonzo and finally give the world what it has been waiting years to see. Lavar said Charlotte would be the most watched team in the NBA if they brought Lonzo into play alongside LaMelo. He argued that Lonzo would actually make the Hornets play faster than they do with LaMelo running the offense because Lonzo has always been a push the pace, throw it ahead, let the game come to you type of player. Lavar was selling this idea with everything he had. The Golden State Warriors were reportedly interested. The Denver Nuggets were reportedly interested. Both teams reviewed Lonzo's medical history and walked away. His knees scared them off. A player who has missed the 2022, 2023, and 2024 seasons with recurring knee issues is a risk that contenders are not willing to absorb, regardless of what Lavar is saying on podcasts. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a player who is 28 years old, a former second overall pick, still theoretically in the prime of his career, sitting at home while his father campaigns louder than ever for a team to give him a chance. And it leaves us with a father whose love for his son is genuinely undeniable, but whose methods have consistently raised the question of whether the attention he generates helps or hurts the people he is trying to protect. Lavar also went back even further in his defense of Lonzo, making a claim that caused significant debate online. He said that if the Lakers had never traded Lonzo for Anthony Davis, they would have won multiple championships by now. He said Lonzo had those Lakers running, that everyone who came through that organization and balled out of control had Lonzo to thank. The Lakers, of course, won a championship in Anthony Davis's very first season with the team. That fact does not stop Lavar from believing what he believes. And that is the most fascinating thing about Lavar Ball when you step back and look at the full picture. He is not performing for cameras. He genuinely believes every word he says. He believed Lonzo should have been the second overall pick. He believed the Cavaliers were wrong. He believes Charlotte should sign him right now. He believes the Lakers made a mistake. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, there is a son who is trying to save a career that is quietly slipping away, while his father's voice gets louder with every setback. The real question is not whether Lavar is right or wrong about any specific take. The real question is this: is Lonzo Ball still an NBA player? Because right now, the answer to that question is genuinely uncertain. Teams have looked at the medicals and walked away. The Warriors, one of the most analytics-driven organizations in the league, passed. No team has stepped up with an offer since he cleared waivers, and there are now quiet reports suggesting that if nothing materializes before the end of the season, Lonzo may explore opportunities overseas. Lavar Ball reacted to his son getting waived the only way Lavar Ball knows how to react: with volume, with conviction, with a target to blame and a destination in mind. Whether or not it works, whether or not Charlotte calls, whether or not another team takes a chance on those knees, Lavar will keep talking. He will keep pushing. He will keep believing in Lonzo Ball when the rest of the basketball world has moved on. The question you need to sit with is whether believing is enough at this point, and whether a father's voice, no matter how loud, can actually open a door that the medical reports have already closed. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Lonzo still has a future in the NBA, or is this the end of the road? And if you have been sleeping on this channel, now is the time to subscribe, because we are tracking every move in this story as it develops.